A little boy whispered, "Mama can't walk anymore," so a cowboy carried them both home. The wind howled across the open plains, cutting through the tall grass like a blade. The sun was sinking low, painting the Wild West sky in shades of orange and bruised purple. Evening was coming fast, and out here that meant danger. Caleb Turner urged his horse forward, the familiar creak of the saddle steady beneath him. He had spent the day repairing a broken fence line near the ridge and was heading back toward his ranch before darkness swallowed the trail. Caleb was known as a quiet man, not unfriendly, just careful with words. Life had taught him that too much talking didn't stop loss from coming. Years ago, he had buried his wife beneath a cottonwood tree and learned how heavy silence could be. That was when he heard it. A sound so small it almost vanished beneath the wind. A child's voice. "Mister, please." Caleb pulled the reins hard. His horse snorted, hooves sinking into the dirt as they stopped. The voice came again, closer this time, soft, fragile. "Please, my mama can't walk anymore." Caleb dismounted and followed the sound toward a cluster of rocks near the trail. There, huddled against the cold earth, sat a woman with a little boy pressed tightly against her side. The woman's face was pale, her hair loose and tangled. One leg lay awkwardly beneath her, swollen and streaked with dried blood. She was breathing shallowly, teeth clenched to keep from crying out. The boy couldn't have been more than 6. His coat was too thin, his hands red from the cold, but his eyes held a courage far beyond his years. "I tried to help her stand," he whispered, "but she keeps falling." Caleb crouched in front of them, lowering his voice so it wouldn't frighten the boy. "What happened?" The woman swallowed hard. "The wagon wheel broke miles back. I slipped trying to carry him. I think my ankle's broken." Caleb looked at the sky. Night was coming fast. "How long have you been here?" "Since morning," the boy said quietly. "Mama told me not to cry." Something in Caleb's chest tightened painfully. He removed his coat and wrapped it gently around the woman's shoulders. "You did right stopping here," he said, "but you can't stay." The woman shook her head weakly. "I don't want to trouble you." Caleb didn't answer that. He had already made his decision. He lifted the boy first, settling him securely on the horse. "Hold tight," he told him. "You're safe now." Then Caleb turned back to the woman. She looked up at him, fear flashing across her face. "I can't walk." "I know," he said simply. Without hesitation, Caleb bent down and lifted her into his arms. She gasped softly, startled by his strength. "It's all right," he said. "I've got you." The boy watched silently as Caleb mounted the horse. The woman cradled carefully against his chest, one arm steadying the child. They rode slowly, the horse sensing the weight and moving with care. The woman rested her head against Caleb's shoulder, exhaustion finally taking over. "My name is Anna," she whispered, "and this is Luke." Caleb nodded. "I'm Caleb, my ranch isn't far." Luke looked up at him. "You won't leave us?" Caleb swallowed. "No, I won't." The ranch appeared just as darkness settled fully over the land. Lantern light glowed softly from the porch, welcoming them home. Caleb carried Anna inside and laid her gently on the bed. He set Luke down beside the fire and poured him a cup of warm milk. As the boy drank, Caleb cleaned Anna's ankle carefully. It was swollen badly, but not beyond healing. "You'll need rest," he said, "and time." Tears slid silently down Anna's cheeks. "You saved us." Caleb shook his head. "I just listened." That night, Luke slept curled up on a blanket near the fire. Anna slept deeply for the first time in days. Caleb sat in a chair, staring into the flames. He hadn't planned for this. He hadn't planned to open his door again, but something about that boy's whisper had reached a place inside him he thought was long gone. Days turned into weeks. Anna healed slowly. Luke helped around the ranch, feeding chickens, asking endless questions, laughing in a house that hadn't heard laughter in years. One evening, Luke climbed onto the porch beside Caleb. "Mr. Caleb." "Yes." "When Mama couldn't walk, I was scared." Caleb nodded, "So was I." Luke smiled, "But you came anyway." Caleb felt his throat tighten. Sometimes that's what matters. By the time Anna could walk again, winter had crept across the land. Snow dusted the fences. Smoke rose from the chimney. One morning, Anna stood on the porch, her eyes shining. "We should go," she said softly. "We can't stay forever." Caleb looked at Luke, then at the empty fields beyond. "You don't have to leave," he said quietly. "Not if you don't want to." Anna searched his face. "Why would you do this?" Caleb took a breath. "Because once, someone carried me when I couldn't stand, and I never forgot." Luke's face lit up. "Does that mean this is home?" Caleb knelt in front of him. "If you want it to be." Snow began to fall again, light and gentle. And on a ranch once ruled by silence, warmth returned, not because life was perfect, but because kindness chose to stay. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a little boy brave enough to whisper for help, and a cowboy strong enough to carry the weight of love home. Winter settled in quietly, the way it always did on the plains. Snow gathered along the fences, and the wind carried a sharp cold that crept into the bones. Inside Caleb Turner's ranch house, however, warmth had returned, not just from the fire, but from the small signs of life that slowly filled the space. Anna healed steadily. Each day she walked a little farther, leaning less on the stick Caleb had carved for her. Luke stayed close, watching her every step as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked too long. Caleb pretended not to notice how often Luke followed him into the barn, or how the boys' laughter echoed in places that had been silent for years. One evening, as snow fell heavily outside, Luke sat beside Caleb near the fire. "Mr. Caleb," he said softly, "did you have a family once?" Caleb's hand paused over the firewood. "Yes," he answered after a moment, "a long time ago." Luke nodded as if that explained something. "Do you miss them?" Caleb looked into the flames. "Every day." Luke thought about that, then leaned closer. "Mama says missing someone means they mattered." Caleb closed his eyes. Anna watched moments like that from a distance, her heart heavy with gratitude and something more frightening, hope. She hadn't allowed herself to hope since her husband died. Hope made leaving harder. As Christmas approached, Luke grew restless. "Do you think Santa knows where we are?" he asked one morning. Anna stiffened. She hadn't spoken much about Christmas. There was no money for gifts, no plans. Caleb overheard the question and answered calmly. "Santa finds places where people take care of each other." Luke smiled, satisfied. That night, long after Luke had fallen asleep, Anna spoke quietly to Caleb. "We should leave after winter," she said. "We can't take more than you've already given." Caleb nodded, though something inside him tightened painfully. "You do what's best." But when Christmas Eve arrived, Caleb didn't sleep. He moved quietly through the house and barn, working by lantern light the way he used to when life demanded more than comfort. He carved small wooden figures, wrapped them in cloth, and hung old lanterns along the porch. At dawn, Luke woke to a sound he hadn't heard in years. Bells. He ran outside, gasping. The porch glowed. A small pine tree stood decorated with ribbons and hand-carved stars. Beneath it lay a few simple gifts. "Mama," Luke shouted, "Santa came." Anna stepped outside and covered her mouth, tears flowing freely. Caleb stood awkwardly nearby, didn't want him thinking he missed the place. That morning, they shared breakfast like a family. And in that moment, Anna understood something she'd been avoiding. They were no longer just passing through. Weeks later, when Anna's ankle was fully healed, she packed their few belongings. Luke watched silently, his small hands clenched. "Are we leaving?" he asked. Anna knelt beside him. "We have to keep going, sweetheart." Luke nodded bravely, then walked out to the barn. Caleb found him there, sitting on a hay bale. "Do cowboys ever get lonely?" Luke asked. Caleb sat beside him. "Yes." Luke's voice wavered. "Because I think I would miss you." Caleb's chest ached. That evening, Anna approached Caleb on the porch. "Luke wants to stay," she said quietly, "and I think so do I if you'd let us." Caleb didn't answer right away. He looked across the land that had once felt empty and now felt alive again. "I don't want you to stay because you feel you owe me," he said. Anna met his eyes. "We don't. We stay because you carried us when we couldn't stand." Snow began to fall again, slow and gentle. Caleb nodded. "Then this is home." Inside, Luke laughed by the fire, unaware that his whisper on a cold night had changed 3 lives forever. Years moved across the plains the way clouds did, slowly, quietly, and without asking permission. The Turner Ranch changed, not because the land was different but because the people were. The house held warmth year-round now. Footprints filled the snow each winter. Laughter traveled farther than the wind. Luke grew taller and stronger, learning the rhythm of the ranch beside Caleb. He learned how to saddle a horse, how to mend a fence, and how to speak with honesty. Caleb taught him more with his actions than his words ever could. "When you see someone hurting," Caleb would say, "you stop." Luke never forgot that. Anna found her strength again, not just in her ankle but in her spirit. She worked alongside Caleb, cooked meals that filled the house with comfort, and slowly allowed herself to believe in tomorrow. The fear that once lived in her eyes faded, replaced by something gentler. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, Luke sat beside Caleb on the porch. "Do you remember the day you found us?" Luke asked. Caleb nodded. "I remember a boy brave enough to ask for help." Luke smiled. "I was scared." "So was I," Caleb admitted, "but we both kept going." Time passed. One spring morning, beneath the same cottonwood tree where Caleb once buried his grief, he asked Anna to stay, not just on the ranch, but in his life. "I can't promise an easy road," he said quietly, "but I promise you won't walk it alone." Anna took his hand. "I already know." They married with little ceremony, just neighbors, sunshine and Luke standing proudly between them. Years later, on a winter evening much like the first, snow fell softly as Luke, nearly grown now, stood by the fence watching the horizon. Anna joined him, leaning easily now, no pain in her steps. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. Luke nodded. "If Mama hadn't fallen, if I hadn't whispered." Caleb joined them. "Then I might still be riding past things that matter." They stood together as lantern light glowed behind them. And in that quiet moment, the truth settled in kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes as a whisper carried by the wind. A little boy asking for help. A mother too tired to stand. A cowboy willing to stop. And from that moment, a family was born. Because the strongest thing a man can do is carry love home when it needs him most.